I'm absolutely delighted to have you all here. So, welcome to BLP, and I'm glad to say the AC is working, and we should keep you fed and watered through the day. So, hopefully, a nice, comfortable day for you whilst the sun's shining, as we all think about the value of solar PV. Great to follow on from James and Lydia, because we also worked on the EMDC scheme, so we were advising Amber Infrastructure on that. So I'm glad that it's working okay for you. Exactly. I was on tenterhooks for you to say it's a disaster, but from our perspective, it was great. And the one really big lesson that we learned from that is that if you're going to do something new, something that's a little bit complicated, the legal structure was a little bit innovative on that. You want to make sure that you're doing business with people that care and that really want it to work. Because if you're fighting an uphill battle with legal structures and people don't really want it to happen, it's a nightmare. And on that project, we had a lot of good partners all making it happen. So I think it's a really good advert for what you can do if everyone's motivated to pull it off. As you know, there's the launch of the Good Practice Guide on solar is coming out later in the day, which we contributed to, and I think it's a great publication. So with that there, I'm not going to say anything else really about solar. I'm going to try and focus on storage and the way that interfaces with solar. In contrast to M&S, we don't have nearly the number of legal teams that you do. So we're a law firm, but we like to bring all the skills together in a single team. So the energy and infrastructure team brings together the finance expertise, the regulatory expertise, the EPC, M&A, commercial contracts, all into a single team, so we can kind of cross-fertilise ideas, and that's helped us to develop up some quite innovative schemes, in particular on the some of those kind of community heating and power projects. Actually, bringing together all those skills has helped us work out where the pitfalls are and to get some of those working very well. Now, I'm conscious that I'm your obstacle to coffee, so I've got a few slides up. I'm going to rattle through them fairly quickly. I understand it's not time for questions immediately after this presentation, but if you want to grab me over coffee, that's fine. And also, I'll be sat on the pre-lunch panel, so we can have a chat through anything there. But if there's literally something that just doesn't make sense, put your hand up and I'll try and flag it now. But if it's okay with you, I'll try and bounce through the slides relatively quickly. So there's a few deals that we've done. We like to do the larger, more interesting ones, and plenty of solar. Not so much storage yet, because there aren't so many projects out there, but we're talking to lots of people about how they can integrate that into their schemes, and that informs some of the points that I'll be coming on to shortly. So why are we talking about storage? What's the new political landscape? James covered loads of that, so I will try and bounce through that pretty quickly. And then the heart of what I want to talk to you about is how do we make money out of it, and why should you do it? If you've got a large property, should you be interested? I think probably yes, but with eyes wide open, because there's loads of difficulties there as well at the moment. Probably going to get easier, but there's some big challenges from a legal perspective, certainly from a financing perspective. This is not straightforward. It doesn't fit into a nice easy bucket for the big finance houses. So how do you get them comfortable with it? There's some technical legal issues as well. Some of those we can probably work around. Some of them we need some help from our friends in government to sort out. And then a little bit of crystal ball gazing to see what's on the horizon. But as James alluded to, Brexit's pretty much what everyone's thinking about at the moment. So it's hard to get any bandwidth on other areas. So why? Because it's really a win-win-win situation if we get this right. There are huge savings to be made, up to 2.4 billion annual saving for consumers expected or possible by 2030 if we implement this. As a generator of electricity, so if you're owning the solar panels on the roof, then having a bit of storage allows you to make sure you sell it at the time that makes best value for you, or rather to consume at the cheapest price, to buy off the grid when electricity is cheap. For system operator, having that flexibility improves the integrity of the whole system and improves safety as well. From the network operator, we all know, especially those that are heavily involved in solar, that we have a real capacity issue. It costs a fortune to get yourself connected, in particular in the southwest of the country. So, there are real issues there, and a bit of additional flexibility could go a long way, especially if we take the US model and get this spread out far and wide, rather than just relying on a couple of large hubs. And the bigger picture, we want to reduce our carbon footprint. So reducing energy use and carbon emissions is a good thing, regardless of whether there's a revenue stream attached to it. But I will come on to the revenue streams that are attached to it later as well. So those of you that are more focused on the bottom line, there is some good news there as well. And finally, as has happened with solar PV, it is clear that as more and more people pile into storage, the costs are going to come down. We've seen heavy subsidies in Japan and to a lesser extent United States driving down lithium-ion costs, and everyone's going to benefit from that. And as we see more and more storage rolled out, the costs are going to fall. I'm not sure if they'll be quite as dramatic as the fall that we're seeing with PV, but I'm just a lawyer, so it's not really my call. But the direction of travel is pretty clear, I think. So, formatting aside, the transition's clear that climate change is falling out of the government agenda. So, as James ran you through all the key personnel, I'll just sort of focus on that one note, which is climate change is gone. It's not in the title. Is that important? Maybe. We know that we're not going to meet our climate change commitments. It's pretty much certain, and the role of Hinkley is very important in that. The role of the interconnectors is very important in that as well. And Brexit calls those two big lines of electricity into question. So big question marks as to where we're going and how important it is to us to get there. And if you put your optimistic hat on, then bringing climate change into the centre of industrial strategy is a great thing, because you're not going to achieve it without that. But I'm yet to hear the noises that really make me comfortable that's where we're going. And James is much closer to that, so maybe that'll be a theme that we pick up on the panel discussion a bit later, because it's really important as to how central we are and our needs are to where this government's going to take us. I think some areas we can be relatively comfortable about in the short term. So the classic energy trilemma, I think at the moment this still feels important. Whether that's there for the long term or not, I don't know. With the carbon emissions being the bit that worries me, I think affordability and security of supply are going to be extremely important for the medium to long term as well. The immediate impact of Brexit does not necessitate a change to the subsidy and consenting regime, but as you've already heard, it opens up some possibilities where we can look to flex some of the constraints that were previously imposed through the state aid requirements. Great to hear some support for the Climate Change Act across the floor in Parliament and the announcement of the fifth carbon budget, but we need to see whether there's real teeth that will get us to a meaningful delivery on that. In the short term, we still think we're going to be seeing the next allocation round for the CFDs this year. Query which technologies are going to be favoured in that. That's quite an important thought for the renewables industry in the UK, but also for investors looking at the whole European piece. So, part of what I'm going to come on to later is the mindset of investors, debt and equity investors, as they look at the opportunities that are here, and they will be taking a European-wide view. And if we send out strong signals that offshore wind's no longer a viable option for people here, the money will go elsewhere, and that will change the world for all of us, whether we're offshore wind or not. So that's a really important, I think, bellwether for where we're going, and the capacity market as well, which is perhaps more directly relevant to the revenue streams you might be seeing. Clearly, a lot of disruption. There are going to be changes in attitudes from investors. There are legal risks and uncertainties that are coming through. The economic effects are probably the biggest, and that's the UK credit downgrade, both in the actual rating and the negative outlook, are hugely detrimental. So the quicker we can shore that up, the better. And as we've seen, there's been a slowing of interest. We're not actually seeing projects being pulled. We're not seeing investment decisions being pulled. All of that is still going on just fine for now. But the question is, what happens next? As people get used to the idea of not a 6-month period of uncertainty, but a 2, 4, 10-year period of uncertainty, does that change attitudes? And mixed messages from the markets and from the big finance houses as to where they're going with that. So the National Infrastructure Commission thinks that the UK is going to be a global leader in storage, and I really hope they're right. We certainly got some of the ingredients to get there, but there are lots of missing pieces as well. But they, in their landmark report, the Smart Power report, which is a great read if any of you haven't already gone into it, they pick out 3 key themes. So the interconnectors, energy storage, and flexible demand. And they say if we get all of these things right, there's an 8 billion annual saving for us by 2030. I think is the date they set that down for. And that is in anyone's money, huge opportunity. And a lot of that requires new investment, new commercial arrangements, new thinking. So for those that embrace the change, there are huge opportunities here for us. So we should be going in with an open mind and enthusiasm, but also a little reality check as to where we are today. So you don't really need to take much data out of this slide. I've taken this from the Department of Energy in the United States, but this is the top 10 countries in the world by energy storage. And the point to note is that we're not there. We're not there. We're not in the top 10. And we're 11th, I think. So, it's not awful, but we've got a hell of a long way to go. And if you exclude pumped hydro, we get in at 4th, I think. So we sneak our way in, but there is so much ground to make up. And that is partly due to the specific constraints we see in the UK. It's partly due to the fact that we've not subsidised the industry in the way that other countries have. And those countries are our competitors. As we look at what we want to do over the next 15 to 20 years, we are competing on a global scale, on a global stage. And at the moment, we're not getting all the help that we might do, or that some of our competitors are. So, the actual numbers don't matter loads. The one figure I'd focus on there is the United States number of projects. 351 projects delivering just over a million kilowatts. That tells you about their disaggregated approach, and I think that really is the model. So if you look at how many people are engaging in storage in the States, you get a message as to where the attitude's gone, and you also see why there's been so much successful innovation there in the contracting models, about the energy saving contracts. You're getting people spotting an opportunity, offering to put in place kit for customers, for large energy users, for the owners of buildings that are not sophisticated energy customers in their own right. And that problem's been solved in a very successful way in the United States, and I think we've got a lot to learn from them. So why is there this huge gap? And what's driving that? So, we've seen in the UK a lot of discussion around energy storage, especially over the last 18 months, not least from former solar PV providers that have decided that there are better markets out there for them to invest in and looking for the next growth. And there's some good PR. People are getting the message across on storage that there are lots of benefits there. And as I said at the start, those are benefits for everyone. So I won't read all of these out, but if you just cast your eye down, it's all good news stuff, really. There's money to be made, there's carbon reductions, there's security of supply. It's all really good. And I'll come on to a little bit of detail as to where those revenue streams really sit. But again, it's the right thing to do, as Lydia alluded to. It's what we should be doing, but it's also how you make money, and it's how we create a system that works for the long term. So we should be embracing this challenge. So this is the bottom line. This is how you make money out of storage. Okay, so we've got, I think it's 3 slides. 1, 2, 3 slides. Lots and lots of revenue streams potentially available for storage. So it should be great, yeah? But what we've tried to pick out on these slides, and you will get them after, so don't worry about kind of jotting it all down. But what you see very obviously when you've got 3 slides of revenue streams is that it's a bit of a mess. There are lots of different bits and pieces that you've got to grapple with if you want to make money out of storage. And each one of those bits, it's not really huge in and of its own right. So if you want to come up with a business case to invest in storage, you've got to find a way of getting all of these bits and pieces together so the revenue streams stack up, so you can fund your investment, so that the timing of payments is predictable, so they don't interfere with each other. It's a real challenge. And you're seeing some people going out to market and saying, we can solve that problem for you. You don't have to do it all yourself. And they're making some quite good inroads. That's a great story, because it's not easy to do. And there will be people that solve that problem, and we're talking to lots of people with some quite good proposals. But you want to see a real step change in the way this industry takes off. You've got to simplify this. You've got to make it easier for people to pile in. There's loads of capital waiting to be deployed, so let's make it easy for them. Let's bring some of these streams together. Let's get them lined up technically and from a timing perspective, so that people can predict where the revenue is going to come from and invest accordingly. Okay, so I won't say any more about the content of those. If you want to come back to any specific bits, either over the break or offline later, it's absolutely fine. But this is really the heart of the problem, to my mind. It's that finance will not come in whilst we have these huge uncertainties and the gaps in the revenue streams. Investors, whether it's debt or equity, have fundamentally pretty simple requirements. They want to see that there's a predictable revenue that's going to pay out their investment well within time. It's not complicated. And all of those revenue streams that I just showed you don't do that very easily. They tend to be very short term. They tend to be piecemeal packages that are difficult for people to get comfortable with. The allocation of risk is more straightforward, really. I mean, that's what we do as a law firm, is make sure that all the risks are allocated into the right buckets, and that's straightforward. You've got to do a bit of work to get that right, but that's not something we need a lot of help with. But getting those revenue streams stacked up is a challenge. With some people, getting those packages right, you are seeing the investment coming in. There's a premium to be paid for uncertainty, for newness, both of technology and commercial structure. But in the main part, you're not seeing the large pools of capital being available for this yet, because people haven't got a really strong product. And I'll come on the next slide to some of the challenges and some of the potential solutions. But it's worth just flagging two particular features about storage. So a lot of people look at storage as they looked at generation, as they looked at infrastructure, they say, well, it's a big investment in a revenue generating asset, so I'll model it, and there'll be a bit of upfront cost, and then there'll be some OPEX, and the revenue will pile in, and I know what I'm doing here. Storage is similar, but accentuates some of those challenges in that there's basically a very high capex and a very low OPEX for it, and the revenue streams are a bit bitty and small. So the sculpting, the financial modelling of storage looks quite different to the classic infrastructure assets that people have piled into over the last few years, and that's because its core value is flexibility. It gives other people that are interested in the system benefits, and working out how those benefits that exist in the system are translated to the person that might install the storage is a real challenge that collectively we all should be motivated in solving. Look, here's some of the key problems that you see from a finance perspective. Storage projects are quite small, and if you want to get people really excited, you want to come with big proposals or portfolio deals. That's one way of aggregating them. That doesn't solve everything, though. Technology risk, well, the risks are reducing. People are getting more comfortable as we get data coming through. There's plenty of data from Japan and the States, and increasingly from the UK as well. We've seen AES and RES putting through some very successful programs, and the more we have coming through, the easier it's going to be to get widespread buy-in. And I've mentioned the last 2 points there already, so let's keep moving through. This is all just basics of how you go about funding a project. You need the right to get on the site, you need the right to build what you're going to build, and you need to connect it to the grid so you can sell your electricity. And typically, if you're taking a project finance mentality, you want to push all the risks out under your contracts to make sure that nothing's sat up at the top of the food chain. So you need a nice strong EPC contractor. Mark Group did a great job, regardless of where they are now, and someone that's going to look after the plant for you. With storage, you've also got some important intellectual property issues as well. A lot of those algorithms that people are pushing out are new, and how do you go about getting comfort with those? That's a slightly new technical issue that people need to tool up to deal with. Then some issues that don't come up always, but will come up a lot with co-location, is the interface. In particular, if you've already got solar PV on the roof and you're thinking about putting a battery in, well, what happens next? Well, depending on how you deal with your planning, potentially you've tripped yourself up on accreditation. Have you just expanded your generation, and do you need to go back around the houses with Ofgem? Possibly. Grid connection, are you putting power out? Do you need to have an arrangement with the owner of the generating kit to make sure that you don't trip each other up with your grid connection, share the costs and so on? Power purchase agreement, there should be better terms available under your PPA. But if you've already got a long-term PPA locked in, it's not always straightforward to negotiate the new terms. So there's a balance to be drawn there. And if you've got funding in, then of course you're going to need to get the banks involved and to get their consent, which with new stuff is never easy. I'm conscious of time, but there are some very basic problems with the system we've got here, which is that it was not designed for storage. We've got a nice, generate, supply, transmit system, but we have storage, and it's becoming an increasingly significant part of the pot. And there has not been clear legislation or clear guidance from Ofgem or anyone else that really explains how it should be treated and what we should be doing with it. And as a result of that, you see lots of, some little, some very significant costs and wrinkles in the way the system works with storage. So things like double charging, it just shouldn't happen. And it does, and it's more than irritant. It's a risk area and a financial leakage in the system that's inefficient. So we do need to address these points, but I won't spend too long now because you're all thirsty, and we've got some time to discuss them later. But it's not a well-designed system for the problem that we're trying to solve right now. So what's going to happen next is, as James mentioned, we've got the business rates issue, which is huge cost potentially for people. We're talking about 6, 7, 8-fold increases in the rateable value of buildings, and that for most people arrived unannounced, including, it sounds like, some parts of government. So maybe there's some room there to push back on that. We will have reduced costs, so that's great. So that'll make the capex go down, but we need regulatory or at least guidance to help us navigate our way through this in a way that makes the revenue streams that exist, makes them available in a sensible way. And I welcome the business as usual noises, but you know your way around government much better than I do. But I reckon they're going to be really busy. I think it's going to be really difficult for people to engage in. This isn't wholesale, but this is significant rewiring of the way our electricity market works. I just think that's a real challenge. And I think even if you go down the model, which I think is quite a strong one, which is let's just wholesale dump everything in and then go about refining it, even that's going to take people's time up for the next year or two quite comfortably. So I'm not convinced we're going to get loads of engagement. I hope we do, and we're certainly in safe hands for getting the message out there. But I think probably the best we're going to hope for really is some nice strong guidance. And if we get that, then you can start making the case to funders that everyone has explained what the rules are and the environment is that we're working in, so we can start to invest as the technology proves itself. And as a result of that, I don't think we should be sat here waiting for the rules to change and for someone to say, look, it's all okay. We've just got to get on, do it, come up with some nice, strong commercial structures that work, make sure we're using technology that's not too risky when we're pushing out new projects, and then say the evidence is there that we have storage that works, we have co-located assets that work, and they make money. And then we'll build up the case, because then we'll say, well, look, we've got loads of stuff that works, and if you just facilitate, then we can get all of this finance piling in, which is basically still keen for the UK on slightly different pricing. So that's all I wanted to say. Very happy to have a chat over the coffee with people, and as I said earlier, I'll be on the panel later, so you can test out and challenge any of what I've just said. Thank you very much.